They flash colors to signify their mood, but we can't see them. They can sense love's flavor in the air, but we can't taste it. They sound the cry of battle with scent, but we can't smell it. Animals communicate, not with words, but with sound, smell, and gesture. Science has come a long way in its effort to understand animal language. Now technology is taking us even further. It's not just for the sake of knowledge. If we could learn to read the most subtle animal messages, maybe they tell us something truly unexpected. Humans may have highly evolved brains, but we're behind the curve when it comes to the senses. We see less than 1% of the light spectrum. We hear 1/10 of all sound frequencies heard by other animals. Even our taste is limited. Some animals get a snapshot of their entire world just by licking the air. Millions of years ago, our ancestors probably heard, saw, and smelt more than we do. Human senses diminished as our world changed, along with our need for them. But to animals, enhanced senses are still vital to their survival. One of their key signals, invisible to us, is scent. Humans and most other primates rely mostly on sound and sight. Our sense of smell has become less important. But one branch of the primate family tree retains its extraordinary sense of smell. Lemurs. Although we evolved from the same ancestors, lemurs were isolated when the island of Madagascar separated from the east coast of Africa tens of millions of years ago. Today, there are more than 100 species of lemur found on Madagascar and nowhere else. Every one of them has an incredibly sensitive nose, thanks to its rhinarium. The famous wet nose of many animals with acute smell. The rhinarium's moist surface is highly effective at picking up scent particles. But what value would such a fine nose be if there was nothing to smell? It turns out lemurs are really good at manufacturing smells too. One species that regularly kicks up a stink is the ring-tailed lemur. With scent glands on their chests, groins, backsides, armpits, and wrists, the males are well equipped for leaving scent. These glands release pheromones, chemicals used to send messages to other members of the same species. By rubbing these glands and urinating in different locations, they mark their territory. In lemur troops, females are dominant. Males have to work to impress them. And they do so by flirting with scent. When a female's ready to breed, she releases a uniquely personal perfume. As soon as a male gets the signal, he applies his own cologne, eau de Lemur, from his wrist glands to his tail. He wafts it in the female's direction, a behavior known appropriately enough as stink flirting. Stink flirting can be very effective, but it's also risky. It triggers instant aggression from other males. What started out as stink flirting can quickly become stink fighting. If the scent doesn't put rivals off, the males fight. By flirting and risking attack, the male is saying, "Bring it on," showing off his strength and bravery. If the female is impressed, she'll allow him to mate. The male's behavior is innate. He doesn't have to think about his next move. When he smells the female in estrus, stink flirting is his instinctive response. The scent is a trigger. Animal behaviorist Rachel Sawyers is studying lemur communication for her PhD.
I'm totally distracted by this.
She believes that if she can isolate the right scents and reproduce them, that she can use them to trigger specific behavior. She knows what behavior scent triggers in the wild, but what about in captivity? She's come to Dudley Zoo in the UK to find out. The bait? Urine she's collected from a male in a different zoo. If her theory is right, then the troop will be agitated, especially the troop's alpha male. Like his wild cousins, he shouldn't be able to resist the urge to stink back at the imposter's smell, even if he can't see the culprit. A sniff sends the scent straight to his limbic system, the most primitive part of the brain. Will it work? Will it trigger the pre-programmed response? He can't fight instinct. He rubs his wrist glands, anointing his tail with pheromones. Locked and loaded, he's ready for war in a uniquely lemur-esque way. Success. It's a stink fight. Not sure who the invading smell is coming from, he approaches a neighboring white ruffed lemur and sees him off. The triumphant experiment has triggered territorial behavior as it would in the wild. Proof that if you use the right stimulus, it's possible to prompt instinct. The next step is to isolate the chemicals that govern mating behavior, to try triggering it in captive lemurs. It won't be easy. This experiment used urine, something that's fairly easy to collect. What Rachel needs now is the scent from the genital glands of a female in estrus. It's a challenge and will rely on the lemur's curiosity.
So we're attaching some filter paper to a tree here. in the lemur enclosure. We're hoping that we'll get some scent marks on the paper. They will either take the wrist and rub it against the paper like this, or perhaps with the rear end also.
It's this rear end marking that Rachel will be looking out for. Like all primates, lemurs are curious. And anything new attracts their attention. Now it's up to them to do their bit for science. But did they get the memo? Rachel will just have to wait while the lemurs' noses go to work, checking out the foreign objects. The wet nose is a common feature among mammals, especially those that rely most heavily on scent communication. In the high-altitude forests of South America lives one of the greatest scent detectors in the world. The spectacled bear. Though his brain may only be a sixth the size of a human's, his olfactory lobe, the area concerned with smell, is 18 times larger. His sense of smell is 7 times stronger than a bloodhound's, 2,000 times more sensitive than our own. Like lemurs, this spectacled bear relies on his nose in every aspect of his life. From locating food to finding a mate and defending his territory. He controls a territory of up to 10 square miles. To make sure everyone knows it's his, at key points around the perimeter of his territory, he rubs his back against trees, claws the bark, and urinates. He wants to avoid any confusion. This is his turf. Other passing bears also leave messages. They give ID, the age and sex of their owner. It's Facebook for bears. He can get the lowdown on who's around. His wet nose allows him to know exactly what's going on at any given time throughout his territory, thanks to this P-male. In the thick scrubland of Africa, there's another marker. It's not much to look at, but looks can be deceiving. It looks like a load of bull, but in fact, this poop gives the scoop on who's around. Rhinos are huge, powerful, and generally pretty defensive, even amongst their own kind. So it's important to be able to tell friend from foe. They don't see too well, so to make sure no one gets the wrong end of the horn when they get together, they use dung, messages they can sniff. A single male white rhino will guard a territory. The more dominant he is, the bigger his patch. For a big male, it can be more than 5 square miles. His home abuts the territories of other males and overlaps with the smaller ranges of females and their young. To avoid conflict, each male will have up to 30 message boards in the form of communal dung heaps, called middens, dotted throughout his territory. The dung contains a cocktail of chemicals from partly digested hormones. Hormones are chemicals produced inside the body to help different organs communicate with each other. But some are metabolized passing through with waste products and can be smelled by other rhinos. The quality of information is not to be sniffed at. Thanks to the traces of hormones, the dung reveals intimate details, not just on an animal's gender and health, but even its place in the pecking order. It's the equivalent of a calling card pinned to the message board of the midden. It identifies who's in the neighborhood without unnecessary strife. Dung hills on the busiest routes can be huge, up to 65 feet across. It's one big pile of, well, information. This 2-year-old calf is still with his mother. Right now, he's too young to be a threat to the resident male, though that could easily change one day. By familiarizing himself with the calf's smell, the resident bull can keep an eye, or rather a nose, on his development via his dung. The calf also logs the old bull's individual scent. In years to come, if the bull's scent disappears from the dunghills, the younger rhino will know there's a chance for him to climb the social ladder. But now, the bull's more interested in whether the calf's mother would be up for mating. He can't just ask her, so he checks the dunghill. He's looking for traces of a chemical called ethylene sulfide, which is produced by females when they're in season. If the male detects it, and the female shows interest, the chase begins. The bull will follow her for days, even weeks, keeping other males at bay until she's ready to mate. Which, according to her dung, should only be a matter of time. Many animals, like the bear and the rhino, are all about smell. But not all are capable of kicking up a stink by themselves. Hyenas have one of the most complex social systems of any mammal. To communicate with one another, they have a wide range of calls and body postures. But they're also dependent on scent. So far, nothing unusual. But in 2013, scientists discovered that hyenas don't make their scent signals themselves. They subcontract out the job to bacteria. Bacteria are known to help digest food, boost immune systems, and aid with various functions in the body. But in hyenas, symbiotic bacteria living in the anal glands produce each individual's unique scent. Some of the hyena's own hormones are metabolized by the bacteria and left behind in the hyena's stinky secretions. When hyenas rub their anal glands on branches and grasses, they leave behind a gooey white secretion. The goo provides personal details, such as which clan it comes from and whether a female is producing milk or is ready to mate. It's a two-way deal. In return for the smells, the bacteria get to live in the hyena's warm, moist glands. Bacterial paradise. Many animals' sexual signals are scent-based, but they're not always picked up by the nose. Even in humans, taste and smell go hand in hand. The way something smells can really affect the taste we perceive. The human tongue has between 2,000 to 8,000 taste buds to help us detect 5 primary tastes: salty, sweet, bitter, sour, and umami. But scientists are discovering there are many tastes humans can't detect. Research has revealed that both wild and domestic cats can taste adenosine triphosphate, or ATP, the chemical that makes energy for every living cell. When the cell or the animal dies, the ATP breaks down. The ability to taste ATP means cats can avoid eating rotting meat that might make them ill. But taste isn't just about finding food. It can even provide a seductive lure. It's spring in the scrubland of South Africa, the height of the night adder mating season. Despite its name, this snake is active throughout the day, mainly looking for frogs. Luckily for the frog, this male has a different quarry in mind. He's looking for love. And he's in luck. Nearby, a basking female is ready to mate. And she's letting everyone know by releasing a pheromone from glands on her back. She's leaving a chemical trail that lets males know that she's ready to mate. As the male crosses her path, he catches her scent trail. He uses his tongue to taste the chemical signals. Reptile sex pheromones are made of fatty molecules that are too large to diffuse through the air. Instead, they fall to the ground in the female's wake and are only detected by direct contact with the male's tongue. His flicking tongue transfers the scent to odor receptors in the roof of his mouth. It sends a signal to the brain, deciphering the smell. Bingo, a female that's ready to breed. The message is aimed only at males. A female snake picking up another female's odor will ignore it. Once the male catches up, he puts the moves on her, sliding all over, rubbing his chin against her, and touching her with his tongue. Up close, he picks up more of her personal stats. But now that he has the full picture, he doesn't seem so interested after all. She may not be old enough for him. Male night adders are toy boys. They prefer more mature females. Big girls provide more eggs than younger, smaller females. maybe next year. The male picks up another trail. Each female snake has its own pheromone signature. This female's pheromones suggest she's much bigger than the first. Almost 3 feet long, about as big as a night adder gets. And he can tell this by her scent alone. The older and larger the female, the more saturated fats she produces. And this female is definitely sending the signal he's been hoping for. He's smelled his way to a fine romance. Most animals use pheromones to send sexual signals. And many, like the female adder, post adverts for any male to find. But recent discoveries have shown that primates are much more discerning, only advertising their availability to the most desirable mates. Animal behaviorist Dr. Stefano Vaglio has been studying primate communication for over 15 years.
I was one of the first scientists to look into olfactory communication in primates. I found that the information communicated between primates by using olfaction is actually very complex.
There are 6 species of baboons, and all live in large troops where every member has its place in the pecking order. Females inherit their status from their mothers. But males must work their way up through the ranks. The higher their rank, the better chance they have of securing mating rights. But climbing the rungs of the social ladder isn't easy. Males are fiercely protective of their own bloodlines.
Male baboons can be very aggressive. Sometimes they might even kill infants, as they might think that they are not their offspring.
Males will only protect their own young. So the females have to be a little deceptive.
Female baboons are really keen to confuse these males, so they need to provide these males with some probability of paternity.
In other words, their ticket to safety for themselves and their young is to trick each male into thinking the offspring might be his own. So they all have sex all the time. Sex is at the heart of the social system. It has as much to do with politics as breeding. It's their way of making sure everyone gets protection. But the females have a secret. They only have sex with most of the males when they aren't ovulating and can't get pregnant. Because each female only wants the alpha to father her offspring. He represents the best genes she can pass on to her young. But taking samples from the females, Stefano has found that they have a secret signal. When a female's ready to conceive, she releases a special scent close to the alpha male, a pheromone telling him it's time to breed. This communication works well in the wild, but not always in captivity. However, Many animals are so rare in the wild that their best chance of survival is captive breeding. Understanding their chemical communication may be the first stepping stone towards helping them.
We aim to understand and ideally recreate in the lab the right chemical signals which can control primate behavior. By giving them the right signals, we can encourage them to breed. This is very important to improve the success rate of captive breeding programs.
Stefano's work has been key to unlocking the role of scent and revealing its potential for helping conservation. Many of his colleagues, like Rachel Sawyers, are building on that research with other species. She's working on bottling the lemur love potion. Her paper traps seem to be doing the trick. They finally triggered the lemur's natural response to mark everything in their enclosure with chemical signals. And this is the one she was after, a female in estrus. Displaying her sexy mood, the flirty female rubs her genital region around the fence, leaving behind the information Rachel is after. She'll be able to analyze the chemical signature left on the paper and compile a list of the ingredients of the lemur's pheromones. She already knows that the pheromones contain molecules of acids, ketones, and hydrocarbons. But she's yet to pinpoint which of these and in what amounts are the behavioral triggers. Once she's distilled the sample, she'll return to test it and make sure it sends out the right message. For researchers studying the invisible communication of animals, it's all about getting the right signals. It's the same for the animals that use them. In some cases, misreading the signs can mean life or death. Especially for this raunchy reptile. A chameleon that doesn't read the signs might end up as lunch. Chameleons are famous for their flashy color changes. This color shifting is used for camouflage, but it also helps them signal their mood. Chameleons are solitary and aggressive lizards, and have been known to be cannibals. Avoiding a fight is the best option. So they signal their intent with a show of colors. This one's flamboyant wardrobe is saying, "I'm not happy, back off." But closer investigation has revealed that chameleons are also using colors in a way we hadn't realized, because we can't see them. They're utilizing a part of the light spectrum that's invisible to humans. Zoologist David Protzel has been a chameleon fan since he kept his first reptilian pet as a child. He's now a leading expert in these kings of camo. He's even discovered new species. With these credentials, he's often called on for chameleon identification. One time, however, was different from all the rest.
People show us photographs from Madagascar to identify the species, and one photograph showed a chameleon under UV light that had 3 tiny spots here behind the eye.
Intrigued, David and his colleagues decided to check all of their specimens, some decades old. What they discovered astounded them.
We found that almost all species have these fluorescent tubercles on the head. And that is really fascinating. It's a completely new, unknown phenomenon.
Using a micro-CT scanner on one of his specimens, he built up a layer-by-layer 3D scan of the structures. This allowed him to dissect the tubercles virtually without using a scalpel.
We found that the fluorescent pattern that we can see here correspond well with bony tubercles of the skull of chameleons. So the origin of the fluorescence is actually the bone of the skull.
The fat content of bones makes them glow under UV light. But the chameleon's skin covers the bony tubercles. So how do we see the glow? David discovered that the scales covering these areas are thinner than anywhere else on the chameleon's body. This allows UV light to penetrate to the bone and reflects it back through the skin.
By comparing the skull of different specimens, we found first that males have more tubercles than females, and older males have more tubercles than younger males.
The bony growths get bigger with age, meaning the older males have larger areas to glow.
This is a male panther chameleon, and as you can see, the tubercles fluoresce quite strongly. We think that fluorescence in chameleons might help males to attract females or even to recognize other males of the same species.
David believes the chameleon's UV glow allows them to stand out to other members of their species, but no one else. These colors are invisible to many animals, including humans. Visible colors are limited by the range of what are called opsin proteins in the eye. Most mammals have two kinds of opsins and can only see two main color groups. Humans have three, and we see everything by combining shades of red, blue, and yellow. Some birds, insects, and reptiles, including chameleons, have many more opsins, so they see a wide range of colors invisible to us. Chameleons also have other adaptations that allow them to see UV more vividly than us.
Chameleons have an extra UV cone in their retina, so the blue that we can see here may be stronger for them than it is for us.
The electric blue revealed by ultraviolet light gives chameleons a far wider palette to use in their communication.
Chameleons are territorial. Every male sits on his own tree and would defend the tree, and they would signal with color change. The color blue is quite rare in a forest, so this blue pattern would be quite conspicuous, and that's another argument why it would work for signaling quite well.
So, in chameleon society, where the biggest males are dominant, they may signal their status with their fluorescing tubercles. Younger males have fewer tubercles, showing that they're no threat. It's a status symbol, but only to those who can see it. For social animals, specific signals can be very important to keep the peace. The more complex the animal's behaviors, the wider the vocabulary of invisible signals. Rachel Sawyers returns to Dudley Zoo. She's distilled the sample she collected from a reproductively active female. She wants to see if on its own it will elicit some stink flirting from the alpha male of another troop of lemurs.
When we have the right signals, such as a female in estrus, we can then show the signal to the lemurs and we can trigger a particular behavioural response.
These females are not ovulating. In fact, lemurs are in season for only 2 days a year, and this troop already has young from this season's mating. So if the male decides to play Romeo and pull out his eau de lemur cologne, it won't be being triggered by the animals here. It doesn't take long for the lead male's super sniffer to pick up the scent. He anoints his tail, but this time it's not an act of aggression. He's putting on his aftershave. Because females call the shots, he needs to find the female in estrus and flirt his way in, seeking permission to mate. Even though there's no viable female present, the alluring scent has him ready to go. He can't help himself. He has to give it a try. He stink flirts around the area, hoping to draw attention from its owner. Of course, this time, he can't find the object of his desires. But he's showing that a chemical signal is enough of a trigger. If Rachel can isolate the ingredients, she can synthesize a lemur perfume to help get them in the mood. Which might be the best way to help some species evade extinction, including the cotton-top tamarin. Weighing a mere pound apiece, these tiny primates live in troops deep in the rainforests of Colombia. In the dense foliage, it's often impossible to see very far, so they don't rely on visual signals for communication, but instead are vocal and highly attuned to chemical cues. They live in groups of 2 to 13 individuals with a clear dominance hierarchy and some very quirky methods of social control. Instead of all the females in the troop churning out babies, there is a single alpha female. She holds her position because she is the strongest. She will choose the best male to mate with, a winning combination for healthy babies. But to further increase her baby's chances of success, she stops other females in the group from breeding, so they're free to help to raise her babies. It gives the colony its best shot at raising the strongest offspring. Animal behaviorist Alison Poirier has based her PhD on decoding this complicated system.
In many primate societies, it's often a male who is dominant. And here we have a dominant female who usually stays dominant for many years. I'm interested in understanding how this cooperative breeding is maintained within the group.
Like the lemurs, the monkeys have glands on their chests, groins and bottoms, which they rub on prominent posts to mark their territory.
The dominant female, who is also the only one to reproduce in the group, maintains her dominance through olfactory signals.
The alpha female releases a pheromone that is so powerful, it suppresses the reproduction in all the other females in the group. It stops their reproductive hormonal cycle. Scientists have yet to isolate the chemicals that cause this reaction. But they have used pheromones to show that even if the alpha female is removed, other females can still be prevented from becoming fertile if her pheromone scent is still present. Studying the invisible signal that regulates breeding and gives the colony its best chance of raising healthy young could be critically important to the species.
Unfortunately, such studies in the wild can become difficult as many tamarin species are nowadays quite endangered.
Cotton-top tamarins are critically endangered. In fewer than 20 years, their population has dropped from 30,000 to just 6,000. They are facing extinction. And they're not alone. Depending on how they're classified, there are roughly 500 species of primate. More than half of them are endangered. Work on lemurs and other primates has already shown that it's possible to isolate individual signals and use them to trigger mating behavior. If scientists can decode the key ingredients, they can build toolkits to aid captive breeding, which could increase the populations and genetic diversity of rare species. Learning the invisible language could provide a lifeline to save some of our most endangered wildlife.